Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ellen Ng and I'm the Economic Development Specialist at HTDC. Today is actually the first session for our Hawaii Women in Tech series, brought to you by the Hawaii Technology Development Corporation, HTDC, Entrepreneurs Sandbox, and the True Initiative. So some housekeeping before we dive in. First and foremost, please keep your audio lines muted and your videos disabled so that we can have a smoother session today. Feel free to send in your questions during the session or throughout the session through the chat function that you see on your screen. Please make sure to select everybody when you send the question so that we can all see it. Selected questions will be addressed during the Q&A session. So to set the context for today, we wanted to share a couple of reasons why we decided that this is an opportune time to kickstart this series. Firstly, we identified gaps in creating a more robust community of women technologists here in Hawaii. Through our conversations, with the women here that we meet at the Entrepreneur Sandbox or throughout the community, we realized that there is a high interest among women looking to enter the field of technology. And they have taken proactive steps to prepare themselves, but they lack the social connections or the opportunities for them to do so. And we also believe that junior women technologists would benefit from career advice from the more experienced ladies in the industry. And so we're hoping to bring the two groups together. Another reason why we brought this series and kickstarted it is, we felt that there's no better time than now to actually showcase the power of technology, especially as we combat COVID-19. So as you can see from contact tracing technologies, 3D printing, drones, data science, the list goes on. And also on a more personal level, can all of you imagine how much harder shelter in place would be without technology today? With technology, we are able to connect with people virtually and work from home. So we feel that since people are paying more attention to the power of technology, we want to leverage this opportunity to highlight that. Through this series, we would like to showcase women working in different aspects of technology, as well as in technology adjacent roles, bringing to light the wide spectrum of technology careers. Lastly, this is a dark and difficult time for many of us, and I'm not sure how many of you joining us today in this webinar have lost jobs or in furlough, but we believe that this is a time that even a small hope and inspiration can bring about positive impact and change. And we would like to use this as a platform today to get some of you thinking about how we can position, or you can position yourself post-COVID. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Hong Phan, co-president at Datahouse, for helping us to kick off this series and taking the time to speak with us today. Hong has had an amazing journey in technology, starting from a data entry clerk and working her way up through large technology firms, including Hewlett-Packard and Oracle on the mainland. Now she's spearheading the growth of Hawaii's largest IT consulting firm, Datahouse, and has been tapped to lead the company's international expansion into Vietnam. So once again, welcome Hong, and thank you for joining us today. Sorry, I think you're muted, Hong. Let's try, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present and talk to everybody and share my experience.
So just to get us going, maybe what you could do is, can you just share a little bit about Datahouse and, in your own words and, your role in your company?
Well, I don't know if most of you are aware, but Datahouse was established back in November 1975. And it's about the same time, it was established 8 months behind Apple. Behind Microsoft by Dan Arita. I don't know if you guys know that, but it's such a trivial to me. At the same time that Microsoft was established, Datahouse was actually being established. And it was established with a vision to provide Hawaii with a software development company and then providing high-tech jobs for the local community. Datahouse is a software development company and also system integrator. So we provide technology implementation for COTS products, custom development apps that fit the client business requirements needs. It varies between project manager to the technical implementation end to end. And at Datahouse, I am the co-president. I don't want to say my partner in crime, Eddie, but we actually share, we are empowered to make sure that we continue the vision the vision and the culture of Datahouse that Dan Arita has put in place.
Great. Yeah.
Role in Datahouse is I'm responsible for the sales and marketing team, the sales and marketing as long as business development and service delivery, which means whatever I commit to the customer or the client, I also have to deliver.
So you take on a lot of responsibility by making sure the client is happy at the end of the day.
Yes.
Right? So, I think what is interesting for me, when I was choosing out, kind of like my career path was actually understanding what a typical day at the office would be like for a role. And that was important to me because you're spending most of your time at the office, right? So I think, if you could just share a little bit about what a typical day at the office would be like for you. I know, of course, now it's, and how is it different now with, work from home and shelter in place?
Well, ladies, if you are joining the technology looking for a job that's working 8 to 5, it's probably the wrong field. Just so you know, right, typical day at work for me is a little bit different because I have both the business development and the sales, right? I'm not usually in the office every day. But usually when I'm in the office, it's really catching up with our team, making sure that our team has everything that they need to be able to successfully deliver our commitment to our client. So that's usually the typical day in the office. It's just making sure that our team is supported. But most of the time, I am out in the field. I travel between both California and Hawaii because most of our clients we're expanding are focused on usually for me it's expanding west, but in this case it's the opposite, right? We're expanding east and we're bringing new market on the mainland. So typical day is really just meeting with client and understanding what their technology needs are.
Great. So how is it different now with shelter in place and work from home, now that you don't really get to see your clients face to face that much?
Well, good thing is we have technology like Zoom and GoTo that we can still have the face contact with our client. So it is a little different that I can't hop on a plane and go and shake their hand and discuss. But with the technology today, we are still connecting. We're able to do the things that we would normally do during the day. But what is the most different though is the fact that I can't get on the plane, fly home and visit my kids. So that's a big difference. But otherwise, this is as usual. It hasn't been in particular in the technology field, in the system implementation and development, you won't see such a break in the work from home model.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you have to actually engage more actively and frequently with your clients now that you don't get to see them face to face that much?
Not necessarily, because it depends on the different types of project that or engagement that I have with the client team. As long as we know what the requirements are and what we're accountable to deliver, we don't have to call them every day, etc. But there's still a need to touch point.
Do you think this would be, kind of this whole video conferencing and remote working would sustain after COVID in your business model?
I think it will sustain. It's just that we have to come up with, my partner Eddie the other day had sent me one of the new program where you can do a coffee session via GoTo. So that's perfect, right?
Yeah.
So as we're changing, there's different types of offering that kind of makes it like you are socializing, but it's through teleconferencing.
Oh, okay, cool. So I think this is the next question I have actually is, something we talked about the last time when we spoke, and, you shared an amazing story about how you got into technology, and that was the first thing I was like, okay, this you need to share with the world. So, I would love for you to kind of reshare it with our audience today, if you can.
Yes, I will. Thank you. And for those of you who are interested in the technology field, probably no one would probably consider data entry as an entry point into technology, but actually that was my data entry point into the field. When I was 16, I was in a data entry clerk for a nonprofit organization in San Diego, serving at-risk youth that are at risk of dropping out, underemployed population, and high risk of going into the workforce. And I was responsible for doing the paper eligibility work, where we fill out 100 forms and making sure that they're eligible and keying that data into a terminal screen like a mainframe system, collecting that data. But what it actually allowed me the ability to do was to tap in as a data entry clerk to understand how the data is being captured from paper, like all the handwritten things I've done, into a data entry screen. And then from there, actually analyzing that data, looking at the dash, creating reports that we're sending it to the state, and using those kind of report to request additional funding. But as the technology changed and shift, we went from mainframe to relational database. I actually got the chance to tap into those technology, going from mainframe databases to UI open databases to SQL Server to Oracle to Informex. Informex is actually my first database that I tapped into, but it gave me visibility into various type of technology within the database space. I'm actually a hands-on DBA for those guys who don't know.
So I think that's really interesting. I remember from our previous conversation, you mentioned that that wasn't even part of your job scope. You kind of, played and incorporated into your role, right? Because you were curious to learn more about it. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Exactly. So as I was, like I said, as I was gathering the data on paper, I was curious, right? Once I enter the data into the mainframe system, where is this data doing? How are we analyzing it? As I got more curious into how the system worked, how the technology worked, it kind of just led me to continue down my career path, building upon one after another, right? How did the database work? Where did the database fall within the data center? How is the front-end application connecting to the database? And so as I progressed, I was able to build connection once upon another and learn the technology end to end.
So I think another really interesting fact that, we found out while talking to you was you didn't have actual training in technology, correct?
That's right.
So how did you go about that? If you can just share a little bit.
It was actually, believe it or not, all hands-on. I spent hours and hours. If there's something I didn't know, I would go out and look for books. I would also break it. Any system that they hand me, the first thing I do is actually try to break the system. Because as I break the system, I gotta put it back together. And that's how I learn, all hands-on.
Mm-hmm. So would that be something you would recommend to ladies going to technology, or do you think there are easier pathways to get there today?
Actually, today it's an easier pathway, right? Because technology from 20 years ago is completely different, right? 20 years ago, we actually have to put pieces together, how a database work, where it sits on the disk and all that stuff. But today, technology's changed. It's made it a lot easier for you to enter into technology, where things are shifting more to the cloud, application or more SaaS. So it gives you more of the less hand-on, knowing how the technical or the piece and parts of hardware and software works, but to really focus on how the business would fit into the technology, to use the technology. So it is an easier way for you, for the next generation to tap into the technology.
Great. So I want to shift, the topics a little bit. So can you actually share with us, for me, technology is an enabler, right? It's something that you can use to solve different challenges and problems. So for you, like, what do you think are some of the business challenges that you are, helping to solve with technology today, through your work with Datahouse, for example?
Most of our clients that we work with are shifting from old technology to new technology. So a lot of the business challenges that we encounter are, they have stuff that are still on-prem that they need to shift to the cloud, or they are still doing things manually, where things should be more DevOps, right? Where it's automated. You're using artificial intelligence now, robots, chats, right? To be able to automate some of that stuff instead of doing their process manually today, right? Continue to do that. And really just digitizing their process to be more digital. modernizing their apps is also a key areas that we see that business are challenged with, is having the ability to modernize. And it's not that they can't modernize, it's usually constraint based on budget, right, based on the business process that needs to be reconsidered. But today, the biggest challenge is really moving their custom application to more SaaS, right? Everything now is service. So those are the typical business challenges that we work with today to in terms of technology.
So I think one thing interesting that you shared with us the other time as well was, kind of the work that you're doing and the reason why you guys are expanding to Vietnam. So can you just share a little bit with us on how that complements the existing, business that Datahouse has here on the in Hawaii?
Actually, I'm going to take a step further on that question, just a step back. Deanna Reed has started the company with a vision to build, to have a software company that allows the local community to job. We actually just took that vision a step further and expanded, so it's not just within Hawaii, right? That we can expand that globally. And so the reason why we chose Vietnam is, personally, I was born in Vietnam, so it makes the right sense. I can speak the language and go there and make it easier to expand. But really, it's expanding that vision that he had seen, that, we don't have to be focused on the local, we can scale it globally. And so that was an extension of that. But the other thing that it brings to the that expansion is our ability to tap into newer technology. Because we now have the ability, right, to have our offshore team to do R&D on the latest and greatest. As we continue to support our customer, we can continue to do that, as well as doing making sure that our R&D team is expanding on the technology and bringing it back to the local community as well.
So do you mind sharing some of the projects you guys are doing in Vietnam? Because I remember some of the cooler stuff that you mentioned.
Yeah, a lot of what we're doing in Vietnam are just really we're building a lot of the mobile applications, and they're actually they're part of our team, basically, right? They're expanding part of our team that are really working on the same project that Datahouse work on today. So we work on a number of different projects. We're building an application in California that allows you to register, lobbyists are allowed to register. We're working on some of the state projects here, such as modernizing the compensation department, the disability compensation department. So there's just a number of projects that we are working on that they are also part of our team.
So, I'm sure you have worked on many technology projects through your, decades of work experience. Do any of them stand out? Like, do you have any proud achievements from the projects that you have worked on?
Yeah, the biggest project that I worked on was back in 2007, when the County of San Diego, I was actually working for EDS at the time, but it was for the client was the County of San Diego, where they had to migrate 400 applications from San Diego, from a local data center in San Diego to Plano in Texas. And there was 408 applications across the board, right? From Health and Human Services to property tax to the major ERP system. But there was one application that no one was able to migrate. Anybody that touched it, it breaks. And it was a Cognos application that has tentacled with Access and a number of other integration. But I had to learn Cognos overnight and was able to take the necessary step to migrate that app. So that I went down history for that one application migration. That also gave me exposure to that migration alone. Just gave me exposure to the entire technology stack from end to end.
So that would be something that, it will be your pride, you would say, most?
It's one of the pride that I have. And most recently is being able to partner with Adobe Oracle, and Splunk. And we actually are rolling out our first production implementation of COVID-19 testing platform.
Oh, interesting. Is it here in Hawaii?
Not Hawaii yet. I'm hoping that we will get it soon, but it's actually in Tanner County in Texas. So that is a very exciting project that our team is working on. And I think that's the next one that I could say that I'm going to be very proud of, and being able to be a part of the COVID-19 solution.
So what can you share a little bit on what specifically that platform is about for COVID-19? Is it kind of an information dashboard, or what is it?
What it allows you to do is do a self-assessment in terms of if you need to be able to test for, you need to test for the virus, right? And if you are, depending on the type of response you put in the survey, it'll categorize if you are high risk, low risk, or medium risk, and that you need to be able to take the test. But the cool thing about the product is that it also allows you to, for the county to track facility where tests are available. So not only are you completing the survey, but you can also schedule where you need to go to take the test, and that they do have the test availability for you. So you don't show up and there's no test kit.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully we'll get it here, maybe in Hawaii, to be able to experience that as well.
Yes,
So I'm just going to shift gears a little bit again, back to kind of, women getting into technology. So, I think a lot of questions, we had when we were talking to women who wanted to go into technology would be, where do you start and how do you learn the skills you need to get into technology?
So, in the back then it was hard, it was intimidating. I want to say that technology was a little bit intimidating, especially for women. Like 20 years ago, it just seems like you got to know a lot, right? You have to be, but nowadays technology is not as intimidating. And because everything is moving, a lot of the development's done behind the scenes to make technology a lot easier to learn, a lot easier to work with, and a lot easier to adapt. And if you look around, like multiple SaaS product solution, and I'll just pick on one, for example, Salesforce. Their Trailhead, if you look at their training availability through Trailhead, they actually train you from being a salesperson all the way to the person that's implementing and configuring Salesforce. So if I was in this phase where I wanted to learn not just a new technology, but how I can use technology, I would probably start there.
Mm-hmm. So start with SaaS platforms then.
Yes.
Based on your kind of projections, do you know of any kind of SaaS platforms you think would be emerging or become more important in the next coming years?
Yeah, it really depends on your field and you're interested. So let's just say if you are a financial analyst, right, who wants to get into the technology field, you would want to look at financial products that are SaaS-based. There's so many competitors that's out there, but really getting to know one, you'll get to know all the other. The key thing about technology is not about learning every product. It's really learning the concept, learning the basics so that you can swing from one SaaS product to the next. And you have to worry about the key and elements in each of those products.
Mm-hmm. So, besides that, do you have any other general advice that you want to give to women who are looking to get into technology? Whether it be a technical role or a technology adjacent role, for example?
There's a lot of user groups that have been set up throughout in the industry for the various type of technology. What I would also recommend for our newcomer is to join those user group, because there's technology that's so broad. You probably haven't really, unless you have a specific that you're targeting. But if you're not, I would just join the various user group that's out there that's focused on the different type of technology, and just determine and make sure that that's the path that you want to take before you go deep dive into a technology.
Well, you recommend, for example, women reaching out to other women in roles that they are interested in just to find out more about what they do.
I would strongly recommend that. There's different types of women in technology group and blogs and groups that would be good. I would also recommend joining those and getting information from there. Build your network, right?
Mm-hmm. So I think another question that we had was, what do you attribute your success to, or who?
I think I want to thank my kids for my success, but it's really my determination, really, and coming to the state as the first generation Vietnamese in the state, it was my determination to make sure that not only was I able to have a career, but also making sure that I had something adequate, to support them. And so, because of that determination, I believe that's what made me successful in my career path.
Mm-hmm. Great. Determination, like grit, I think would be the word to remember for that.
My kids, that's my motivations.
Grit and grit. Great. So, if you were to give some advice to your younger self, what do you think this advice would be?
I think if I was looking at myself in the mirror 20 years or a year ago, I would tell myself to give me moments of time to reflect and to kind of plan out where I want to see myself every 5 years, right? So this way I can step and look at it and really just focus on what's going to make me happy and not worry about or listen to everyone else and what they're saying. So that's what I would tell myself.
Good one. So, I mean, before we go into the Q&A, because we're seeing a lot of questions come in, one question I had was, with this whole COVID-19 crisis, how do you think women, women technologists or women wanting to enter technology leverage on this, situation right now?
With COVID-19, there is, even though we're going through this dilemma and issue, there is a lot of opportunity out there. And from the technology space is a lot of the product vendor, whether it's SaaS, whether it's Oracle, whether it's Salesforce or Adobe, they're giving you the tools, they're giving you free training, right? So you should leverage that opportunity. Learn those types of product that's out there right now because they're just out there. And everybody's trying to use technology, whether it's teleconferencing or building different application. Leverage the free software that they're giving out in this limited window of opportunity and build something. That's what I would do.
Mm-hmm. It's a great advice. Yeah, there's so many free courses, across like Coursera, Udemy, and everyone's just throwing free courses at you today.
But it's not just free courses; they're giving out free license.
But yeah,
So,
that's true too. Yeah. Okay,
leverage
so we are seeing a lot of questions from the audience. Let's pick some of them for a home to address. So the first question, I guess, from Robbie, she's asking that she's a more senior level person, but she lacks coding skills. What would you recommend as a great pathway into a tech-oriented career?
It depends on her senior. Okay, so she's a senior level who is a developer, it sounds like, and she's doing coding. We all know that coding is changing. It's changing drastically as well, because the way that we code today is different what we're coding in the future in terms of going from object-oriented coding into functional coding. So if I was looking towards the future, I would look towards the functional coding aspect of it. And that's where the trend is moving towards.
Are there specific functional coding languages that you look at? Like maybe Python or?
Python isn't quite the functional coding. There's just a couple of handfuls that's out there, but the way that you design the application in that space is a little bit different than the standard. So I would just look to see head towards that direction in terms of coding. But language itself changes dramatically too, right? Because as the technology it's changed. But I would go more in that pattern instead.
So I think another question, Robbie, if we didn't answer your question, feel free to type back in. Another question from Suzanne. She asked, as a leader of a company, what are some of the major issues you deal with?
Oh, that's a very good question. Right. It's really the thinking as a leader is, you can't be a leader without followers, right? And to have people to jump to have people to support you in your direction and your vision, that's usually is the hardest thing as a leader, is to make sure that we set the right foundation, we set the right strategic, and we set the right vision so that our team can easily adapt and feel that they're secure in moving forward. So I think that's usually is the biggest challenge in the leadership role.
Mhm. Okay, we are waiting for some more questions to come in, but in the meantime, I think I have another one that just kind of popped up. So what do you think are some of the emerging roles in technology moving forward?
The emerging roles in technology.
Whether it be data science, do you think people need more data scientists, or even from the context of Hawaii?
So a lot of the shift that as I continue to do my research on the technology and trend, is a lot of it is shifting more into, like you said, and we're moving from big data into like a more data scientist type, right, where you're handling lots of structured and non-structured data, but it's more shifted towards artificial intelligence. What do you do with that data? How do you answer that data, right? How do we automate? How do we replace using technology to do action on behalf of what used to be a person? So it's shifting a lot more in the artificial intelligence space. That's where I'm seeing.
Okay. There's another question that just came in. So Michelle is asking, she said, you mentioned picking up books along your way. Are there any standout books that you would recommend for leadership or personal growth? Or even tech books, like technical books that help you in your work.
It's sad to say, but actually the way that I got started was all of the book version. I started out with the versions for dummies, right? I don't know if you've seen those yellow books, right? The version for dummies, but there are actually a lot of books out there. In fact, actually, as I shift over to the leadership role, I'm actually less on the technology, but more on the leadership types of management. But actually, honestly, I haven't really been caught up on textbooks that's technology based, because everything is out on the web.
How about leadership or personal growth kind of books? Have you been seeing any of those? Have you been reading any of those recently? Or even, magazines or whatever what's your go-to, I guess?
What's my go-to? Usually I just read, I surf article that's on the web in terms of related to technology. For books, I don't read as much book as I'm supposed to. I really don't read that much book so I don't have a favorite.
Is there any kind of content that you go to, for example, like podcasts or videos that you watch to help you with your leadership?
Yeah, it depends on what information I need. So usually like I said, I start out with the web, searching the web to kind of see what type of content that I need depending on the subject area. So that's usually where I start.
Mm-hmm. Great. So I think another question that let's see, there was another one that. So for a student who is planning, oh sorry, there's one more question here. Sorry. So Suzanne is also asking. She said, hey, I'm curious to know if you guys or Datahouse is hiring. What kind of people are you looking for?
Datahouse is hiring, and it depends on the different roles that we are hiring for. But we started a mentoring program that we partner in with the university as well to bring in participants that are new to technology. So we do have openings. It all depends on the type of project that we have that's available. But again, we hire from entry to mid to senior level depending on the needs.
What are some of the characteristics or like the qualities, if all technical skills being all equal?
You know,
What do you guys look out for?
for what's important at Datahouse is not necessarily the skill set or how well you can code, but it's your culture, how you fit into our culture, right? Are you hardworking? Are you willing to learn? Those are the things that we look for more than, because with the skill set we can train you, right? We can spend time to help you through it, but it's really how's your attitude. How will you fit into our culture, and so that we can allow you to expand once you're on board with our team.
So the next question that we are getting is from Vince. He's asking, can you give us an idea of a typical project Datahouse would handle, from initial customer inquiry to planning and delivery of the product?
So it varies from project to project, but I'll give you one example that we work with recently. So we had from the sales cycle, we had an opportunity to work with a client in California that's looking to modernize their application that was on a like a .NET application, and we had the ability to re-platform that application to a SaaS solution. And so we had a team of business analysts that went out to gather and understand how they use their system. How they're not necessarily how they use their system, but what is their business process, right? Who are the people that's involved? Who uses the data? Who needs to make decision? So the business analysts would then gather those business requirements. Then we have a developer team that will convert those requirements into system development, and then we built the product.
Great. So Vince, I hope we answered your question. Feel free to, again, ask follow-up ones if we did not. So another question from L. He's asking, what are some of the programming languages that are popular here in Hawaii? And I'm not sure, I mean, if it's just in Hawaii, but typically programming languages tend to extend out beyond Hawaii, right? That's how they become popular. So, maybe just broaden it a little bit. What are the popular programming languages today?
Yeah. What I've noticed is, a lot of people are moving from the standard SQL and to, from C#, they're moving it to more Angular, to more mobility, to Python, Java. Java's key. If you know Java and JavaScript, it's used widely in a lot of the application platform. And also it depends on, there's so many different types of development language flavor, right? Depending on the vendor that you are using as well. So for example, if you were on Microsoft, you're more .NET driven, right? If you were on Oracle, you're more Java. So it depends, but the common that we've seen are .NET or Java, JavaScript.
Great. And let's see, from Ben, who's asking, are you able to discuss Datahouse project management tools leveraging and regarding workflow and process?
Yes. So project management in terms of workflow and process, there's a couple of tools that we use to gather this requirement. So in the old days, right, everything is gathered and you put in Word doc and you put in Visio in terms of business flow and icon. But recently we chose a very simple, it's called Bazazi, where it uses the BMP language where you would draw out your business process, and then you can simulate those workflow as well, whether it's a system workflow or it's a person workflow, you're able to simulate that. So that is one of the tools that we use to track, to document business processes.
Great. So I think Vince was asking what was the tool name. So are you asking in terms of?
Bazazi, it's a tool name.
Bazazi. So Vince, I hope you're answering your question here. I think another question I had was, like, as a woman in technology, how do you, of course, we talk a little bit about how you keep yourself, educated on, all these new developments in technology. But I think another question could be, or another way of seeing it is, how do you keep yourself inspired? When things get tough, in your work and life.
Yeah, for me, I've always had that hat that I put on that they usually call me the firefighter, right? And it's really about, learning a new system and developing and putting it together. So I continue to do that, even though, 8 to 5, I'm in the office or I'm working with the client team. But in my spare time, I'm actually doing things on the side, creating my little own apps or making sure how this works. And that keeps me in touch with the technology.
Great. Okay, so another question here from Yang. He's asking, how do you find the best developers and programmers in Hawaii?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
How do you find the best developers and programmers in Hawaii? Or do you even search beyond Hawaii? I think that's the other question.
We do. It's really hard to find resources in Hawaii, and that's the reason why we look at culture fit more than your requirements. But we actually do search just within Hawaii. We also search globally as well.
So what kind of the roles did you guys find difficult searching from Hawaii that you had to look elsewhere?
Yeah, senior position are hard to find. Enterprise architects are hard to find. Enterprise architect, high level security position or with those backgrounds are hard to find on the island. And then more specialized position in certain technology are also hard to find. So let's just say .NET developer, there's a lot, we could probably find those much more easier than if you wanted to find somebody who has the Oracle ERP implementation in the island, right? So it varies depending on the type.
So would you say those will be good things for people here in Hawaii to pick up on to meet that demand?
Yes, there's a high on the mainland, right? The one thing that those of us who's on the island is really not look at the trend that's on the island in technology, but look at the trend in the mainland, right? Because that if there is a requirement for a huge requirement or in terms of, let's just say, as people are moving or modernizing their ERP suite, whether they use this Oracle Cloud or the SaaS solution or the N4 solution, it doesn't matter, right? There's a trend out there that'll tell what type of resource that's required. And so if you want to specialize in that area, look at the trend on the mainland. Don't look at the trend on the island, because typically by the time the island implement that part of the technology, we're probably 2 years behind in the mainland, right? We're
That's a really good advice. Yeah, great. So I think another question we had, we'll just wait for more questions to flow in. So share with us one fun fact about yourself that, that we would be surprised to learn.
For those of you that knows me, I'm a meat eater. So they're going to be shocked to hear this, but I actually I don't like to eat a whole lot of vegetable, and they all know that. But I do like most is eating fruit off of a tree. What that means is I will actually go into the next door neighbor, climb up their tree, and steal their fruits.
Have you done this in Hawaii, or was it just?
I haven't done it in Hawaii yet. I've been threatening Dan's, he has this mango tree, and I've been threatened to make my way over there to do that. But in San Diego, I do that very often. I go out to the neighbor across the street, and I would climb up her guava tree, and I'd just sit up there, and I would eat the guava. And then one day she would call the cops on me, and get me off of the. It is the best fruit that you could taste.
Well, now you know. Okay, we have one more question that just came in again. Al is asking, what technologies do you need to learn to do full stack web application development? That's the first question. The other question he had was, does security play a role in this full stack knowledge, or is there a security team that does code review for potential security holes?
Okay, so in order to be a full stack developer, you have to start from your front end, right? Making sure that you adapt to the type of front end, the visual, more of a visual, right? Because you can code and you can write code, but if your visual is not an awe, right? It has a awe effect to the user. It doesn't attract, right? From the backend side, you have to know certain database. And as you know, right, we're moving away. We went from mainframe to relational, and now we're going to non-SQL and so forth. So look at the different types of database technology to make sure that you have that end stack. Security-wise, there are so many open source tools that allows you to check your code. It'll also allow you to check if your code, I don't want to say secure, but it will check to see certain standards in terms of that. But if you deploy that full stack on like a AWS, you can leverage all of their security services instead of having to design it yourself.
Great. So I hope we answer your question, Al. So Ben is asking, he said, how granular is your security awareness regarding Datahouse? In SaaS, do you outsource or do you have your own security team?
In SaaS solution, right? SaaS actually comes with their own security that's moved in because it's part of their SaaS service security. What we add on top of that are security protocol and standard to make sure that we are reinforcing or making sure that we have the right controls to make sure that SaaS solution is secure. There are different types, like I said earlier in the other question, there are different types of tools that we can run depending on the type of language, just to make sure that the coding is standard, and if there's HIPAA data, that it's encrypted. If there's data that has sensitive data, that's encrypted and secure. So those are the things that we would do add on to just a SaaS solution.
Great. So another question here. What do you think would the biggest challenge for the next generation of women be? And how do you think other women can be a strong role model for them?
I think a lot now that, with everything that we're dealing with in terms of going into this past COVID, right, with the social distancing, so forth, really a lot of it is building on what you know and who you work with and the relationship. So if this continue, I think that's a major challenge, is being able to find that platform to be able to do that social networking, right, for the next generation of women. So a lot more of these types of session, a lot more of these types of work group that you can pull in will help to facilitate some of those challenges that they would have to.
So how do you think, women like yourself can be a strong role model for the women from the next generation?
We continue to participate in your sessions.
Thank you. Give advice. So let's see, what other question? So Yang is asking, have you thought about doing your own startup company instead of leading a company?
For me, that I always feel that I'm a risk taker and I'm willing to do all the startup, but I always felt that being part of the company is a bigger. So that has always been, I just felt like there's a bigger, I can do more. I can do more if I was with a company versus a startup.
Great. So I think we are almost coming to the end of the session, but one last question that we had was, if you had to leave, everybody here in the audience with one word at the end of this session, what word would it be?
Purpose. Purpose.
What do you want? Can you explain a little bit more? Why would that word be?
Everything that we do should have a purpose. Every career, even if in a career choice that we make, we should tie that to a purpose.
Great.
Purpose is my word.
Awesome. And that's kind of what guides you through your own life, I guess. Awesome. So I really want to thank you today, Hong, for participating in our Women in Tech series and for answering all these questions that people have. And we wish you all the best in your future endeavors, and we look forward to seeing all the amazing work you will do for Hawaii and outside of Hawaii with Datahouse.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
So for the rest of the attendees, thank you for joining us today. So this session has been recorded and we'll be sharing it with you via email. So keep a lookout in your inboxes. We have something fun to share. Our next Women in Tech series will be up. Let's see, let me pull it out really quickly for everybody. So on May 6th, we actually would be having Dina Turney join us. So Dina Turney is the founder and CEO of Pacific Point. And the registration link should be shared in the chat box. So keep a lookout for it. And we really hope to see you on May 6th. Thank you, everybody.